Today in the AWS Developers Podcast, we're talking about a new capability of AWS Amplify around generative AI. We're going to explain that in a minute. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for downloading these new episodes of the AWS Developers Podcast. We're available in all good podcast applications from Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, on YouTube, Deezer, Spotify, and many others. If it is a good podcast app, I'm sure the AWS Developers Podcast is available in it. AWS Amplify today with a new release that has been launched a few days ago, and with a new co-host. I have the pleasure to have Tiffany, to welcome Tiffany Souter, your developer advocate in my team or in our team. We're in the same team. Maybe the listeners of the podcast have seen you already on YouTube and Twitch. You're recording a lot of video these days.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone.
Hello, and our guest to talk about AWS Amplify today is Salih. That's the short name we use. Mohamed Salih. You're also a developer advocate in the Amplify team. You're a regular guest in this podcast because you came a few months ago already to talk about Amplify V2. So before diving into the details, maybe let's just recap to get everybody on board. What is AWS Amplify?
All right, so AWS Amplify is, in the simplest term, it is your companion to build cloud-powered applications. So if you want to build an app that has authentication, data, some Lambda functions, maybe with a hint of storage in it, the Amplify is your best companion. You can build your applications with TypeScript to create your cloud infrastructure. The client is automatically generated or be generated for your models as well through the CLI. In addition, you can control your development flows through the sandbox environments or deploy it through the hosting. We have many capabilities like actual website hosting with server-side rendering, single-page applications, or just anything that you have. Overall,
I used to say if you're a front-end developer and you want to create some infrastructure on the back end, like user authentication and API, give a shot at AWS Amplify, because it's probably the easiest way to get started as a front-end developer.
Yeah, absolutely. I have seen, or I have worked with many developers in many different conferences, and whenever they try, they always complain about how complicated it is for them to actually jump into the cloud environment. And the abstraction that Amplify brings makes a lot of people's lives easier because they can still take advantage of the power of the cloud, but at the same time, they can use the language that they know to provide or create their cloud infrastructure, as well as use the languages that they use in their application. Like in case they are building a macOS application, they can use Swift to connect to the cloud infrastructure. Same goes for React Native. In case they're using TypeScript, they can connect to their backend through TypeScript. So overall, the idea of Amplify is to bring the developer experience and make front-end web and mobile developers' lives easier than they mostly have it.
We thought AWS Amplify. A couple of months ago, we launched AWS Amplify V2, which makes the experience of creating backend infrastructure easier. Now developers can just type code, and I invite you to listen to that episode. I will link to it. So if you want to catch up on Amplify V2. But today we're talking about a new capability. A capability in Amplify, it's like a functionality. If you want to add API access for your application, or add user authentication or file storage, these are capabilities of Amplify. And there is a new one today around, guess what? Drum roll. Generative AI. So explain, what is the problem we're trying to solve for developers?
Yeah. When we try to use the AI capabilities, like imagine that you want to just send a request to a large language model. For example, you want to send a request to Cloud from Anthropic. You need to jump through hoops, or you need to create a Lambda function. Then you need to manage that Lambda function. There's the security aspect of it. There is the management of the resources and many more. What we fix here is again, for the folks who are coming from non-cloud environments, we want to make their lives easier. When they build their applications, they will define the AI components as part of their data structure. And from their perspective, they will just add one more field to their schema, and they will call those schemas, those data parts directly from their cloud. They will call these parts directly from their client.
That's a core feature of AWS Amplify. Maybe we have to explain that, is that when you want, as a developer, to interact with a backend, you first define your data schema. I want to work on, I don't know, orders, and there is an order ID, a name, part numbers, blah, blah. And adding generative AI now is just adding a schema or a field in a schema. And as a developer, I can use the same API I use to interact with my data, but now to interact with a large language model. Did I understand correctly?
Absolutely. And I will take even a bit further. The advantage of this is it is also allowing you to communicate with your Amplify backend structure as well. For example, we will go deeper in a second, but in case you want to use Lambda functions to call an external API for your generation, you can still do it through this new structure as well. We have handlers that you can call functions easily, or you can define your AppSync resolvers and just pass this information through the handlers, and it will automatically work. The idea is to not just provide an easier way to create AI applications, but also give people a chance to use their own data through these AI applications, as well as creating more advanced scenarios as well. Because one of the things that always people complain about is the advanced scenarios.
That's really interesting because I'm not a web developer per se. I'm not a front-end developer, but I'm an AI developer. And I've been using Amazon Bedrock a lot. There's a lot of different services that Amazon Bedrock comes with. Does it mean that you can do anything with Amplify AI Kit? Like, can you have agents? Can you do agentic workflows? Can you create RAGs? Like, I don't know. My understanding now is that with Amplify AI, you don't even have to go to the AWS console in Amazon Bedrock and create all of those resources in the console. Am I right?
That is yes and no. Let me explain it. So the yes part is Amplify AI is exactly doing what you have mentioned. Let me give an example about the RAGs. In Amazon Bedrock, we have knowledge bases, right? So we can actually provide the data that we want to create the RAGs. In case folks doesn't know what RAG is, RAG, I think it's like retrieval augmented generation, if I remember correctly. Tiffany, if I'm wrong, you can just correct
That's exactly
me.
that.
And like when the idea is that you provide some resources to your large language model, and they use these resources through vector databases and so on to generate more personalized and more accurate answers to your questions. And of course, when you want to have an AI application, you want to have this capability because it makes your app more specific, more real. And with AI Kit, exactly what we want to do is to give that possibility. How we can do it is there are multiple ways. For example, I have actually written one article. Hopefully, this will be out when this podcast is out. It shows how you can do it through the Lambda functions or through the AppSync resolvers. And again, we're just trying to make the system part of our large language model usage. So we definitely have support to whatever Amazon Bedrock can do.
So as a developer, I don't need to learn the Bedrock API. I just use the AWS Amplify API just like I do to manipulate, to retrieve or store data or to call a function. And that's pretty much it.
For complicated scenarios, I think you still need to know what you're doing. For example,
it's always better to know what we're doing.
Yeah. Like, for example, when you want to retrieve a data from a knowledge base, you have to know what you're retrieving. Of course, you need to have the knowledge base ID. For example, you need to define that and give that to the to the resolver or to whatever you use it for. But we have documentation all around that. We have covered the knowledge bases. We have also something called tools. Tools are part of the conversation flows that we actually get the context out of the conversation and provide it to the tools, and whatever third party or internal data that we want to reach, we will still be able to do it and get the personalized data as well.
I was wondering, can we take a couple of examples from an end user use case? Well, as a developer, what can I build? What type of application can I build with this AWS AI Kit?
So right now we have sample apps around a couple of things. One is I built it for this game dev challenge that AWS has. It is a real-time quiz application. What I did is I use the data capabilities of Amplify to have the real-time updates, and I also use the generation part, which is one-time generation out of the prompt that you give to the large language model, and we just generate questions according to the input that customers enter. So this is one thing that I built. So the content generation is one thing. Of course, you can go as complicated as you want. I am not an AI developer, so if you see my prompt, probably, Tiffany, you would laugh because mine is like the sentences of a 5-year-old. I want this, I want that, and I want it this way, and it actually works fine. And what else we can build? Like, for example, our teammate Eric has built a chat application clone. It's just a few lines of code, and we have a video already on AWS Developers channel that people can build in 10 minutes. So for folks like Seb and I, it's perfect. It's like using the UI library, writing as little web code as we want, but still seeing a nice result with attachments, like with everything that the large language model, of course, offers as well.
That's the two main use case: content generation, text and image, or chat. So to include these inside your application.
Yeah, like in my opinion, according to the model that you use, for example, you can also do image generation as well. By content, I was thinking text, but you can do image generation and so on. So you can do recognition and generation, so you don't need to do one thing or another. Mm-hmm. Also, you can connect your large language model to your data as well. So the examples were just the examples that I was thinking of that is already available for you people to play around. But for example, we will have a blog post already when this is out about how you can call an external API to get a result for your large language model, or how you can call your database from your Amplify application that is also taking advantage of the large language models as well. So the idea is that the generative AI perspective, the generation of anything that you want, is available through the Amplify AI's capabilities. So I wouldn't put a limit to it. Maybe it's my ignorance on the field, but like it is, of course, I will say the best answer that every developer gives, I would say it depends.
I have a naive question. Let me know if it's a bad question or not. But for the like simple apps that you've built, do you have a number? Like, how much does it cost when you want to host like a website like this with Amplify?
So everything that we provide from the library perspective and everything is for free. What people pay is the services going behind the scenes. So from the hosting, from the data and so on, we don't have numbers that I can give. I don't know it off the top of my head. I've seen some of my colleagues doing some research about some numbers, for example, on the hosting perspective. And also I know there are some numbers, the like estimations around using Amplify from the data structure or using AI capabilities behind the scenes, because at the end of the day, it is Bedrock. Or if you're using RAGs, there's also the cost of vector databases, for example, like OpenSearch. So at the end of the day, it depends on whatever you are using.
I mean, well, of course, like the price always depends because like I asked this because, for example, when you create a RAG, there has to be, if like all of the infrastructure is taken care of behind the scenes for you, then it might choose like a vector database that is, probably open source or something. And then I know that depending on the type of database that you choose for the RAGs, like can be costly. So I was wondering like what would be the default? Because I guess there is a default that you can customize if you want.
You will create your own knowledge base directly from the Amazon Bedrock page. So it's not going to be created by Amplify. So as you know, if you go to the knowledge base, it will choose OpenSearch as default, but also you can pick the alternatives that you find more suitable for your use cases. That being said, like for the front-end developers out there, I would recommend you to do some research before you select the default one. If you're testing things out, my friendly reminder is if you're done with testing, be sure to remove your vector database generation as well to prevent yourself from having some surprises when the billing time comes.
Is it a good practice to actually call the large language model directly from the front end? Or in terms of architecture, maybe sometimes it's better to have like something in middle, an API gateway, a Lambda function, something where you can apply a bit of throttling to control your costs and maybe filtering for the data that are going in and out as well?
That's a great question, actually, because with services like Amplify, you rely on the way that they handle things, like they rely on the way that they create backends, or you rely on the way that they create the storage and functions and so on. And for the Amplify AI Kit, behind the scenes, it is actually nothing magic again. For the conversations, it is still using Lambda functions to create the streaming information. For the generation, like one-time operation, it is using the AppSync behind the scenes. So that is why the AppSync resolver addition as a tool is easier with the Amplify AI. So at the end of the day, if you want to have this extra freedom, probably you can do it on the AI side, I would say. You can have the flexibility to call an external one and so on. But the way that we have created things for Amplify AI and for the conversation and generation, I would say that they have been created in a way that they should be performant. If there's already a problem, the communication channels are always open. We can always discuss. There are GitHub issues that the customers that create. There's Amplify Discord that we already talked about in the previous podcast episode, and we are always available over social media as well. So just ping us anywhere, and we are highly customer oriented, not only as a company but also as a service as well.
And all the links to the Discord, the GitHub are in the notes of this podcast. Of course, you just scroll down. The Discord is a fantastic place to get help. It's a really vibrant community, very caring and helping community. We didn't talk about something. So we said Amplify is for the front end. We support web front end, mobile with Swift native, Android native, Flutter, and React. But for those of you that are developing a web application, the library proposes a web UI, a web component that I can just drag and drop or include with minimal code in my web app. And I have a generative AI chat in my app.
Exactly. So I want to take a step back and explain what is Amplify's UI components. The Amplify's UI components, we will also share the link in the episode details, that these are accessible, themable, and highly customizable UI components that we provide also for free to the front-end developers. The idea is that they are automatically connected to your backend infrastructure in case you want to do authentication, for example. It will just get information about your infrastructure from a local file that has been generated and create the UI component for it. The UI component will control the whole authentication flow, bring you the sign in, sign up, forget password, anything that you want according to your infrastructure. And the advantage of it is just like 1 or 2 lines. They also come with React hooks, meaning that they also come with direct connections to your UI as well. So you can call a function and your whole structure will listen to it. When you want to sign out, the authenticator flow will listen and take you back to the sign-in without allowing user to go to the places that they shouldn't go. So this is just an example. We have also storage, file upload, and everything. We have directly usable buttons, text fields, and so on. And last but not least, we have the new AI kit, which is providing a direct chat UI like you would see with any other chat application that you would be using day to day.
That's really cool. I mean, specifically for people like me who are not, like really good at developing, web apps or stuff like that. I mean, it feels like it's making everything so much easier. It's really cool.
How can I get started? I'm a developer. I want to test the new Amplify AI. Is it for web only or for all supported operating system and platform by Amplify? And how can I get started?
For Amplify AI right now, the supported platforms are limited to web frameworks plus React Native, because right now it is supporting the TypeScript part. But this is the situation right now. When you listen to the podcast, it might be a few weeks or months. Check out the documentation of Amplify, and you can also check out the starting guide for setting up your AI on the documentation. We also have sample apps on AWS organizations on like AWS Samples GitHub and built on AWS GitHub organizations. You will see some examples written with React Native, with Next.js, whatever you like as a front end or mobile application framework. And last but not least, check out the AWS Developers YouTube channel. We are working on a lot of tutorials right now to go through and help the developers out to build their applications.
And technically, when I'm in front of Visual Studio Code and my code, what do I need to do? What are the main steps? We don't need to enter into every detail, but the high-level helicopter view.
Here's what I would do. I'm sitting at home. I have an idea to build something with AI. I go, open up my computer, open up my IDE. First thing, I will create my front-end application. Whatever you want, you can create it. Next thing is you will create an Amplify application, which is using the create Amplify command. You don't need to install anything. Only thing, you need 2 things. You need the AWS account configured on your computer, and also you need to have the Node package manager. And with npm, you can install or you can run the npm create amplify command to create an Amplify application. And now you're settled. Next thing that you need to do is to open your data folder under the Amplifier folder, go to the resource file, and in the resource file under schema, you need to add a new field. For example, you will call it chat, and you will say chat a.conversation. In the conversation, you can define the AI model that you want to use. Imagine you want to use Cloud 3.5 Sonnet v2. You just write it as a text. You don't need to write it as a model ID. We take care of it behind the scenes for you. There's also an auto-completion for the models. And in case you don't feel confident, we also work closely with the Amazon Q developer team. So there's code completion for inline suggestions as well. So you can write what you want and the code will be generated for you. Then you will define the prompt. If you go deeper, you can give prompt some input as well. You can add the tools like I mentioned, and also you can call other functions. And the tools are really nice because you don't need to define the tools like they are complicated things. You will define them by describing them, and the large language model will understand what they are doing and handle the calling the external part like AppSync resolvers or lambdas or whatever you want to call automatically for you. So yeah, once you do this, next thing is deploying. You can deploy it in 2 ways. You can either deploy it directly through the AWS console when you're checking your code to Git, or you can zip it and just put it to S3 whatever you want, and you can deploy your application through the Amplify console. Or my favorite thing, you can do the sandbox environments, which is per cloud infrastructure that you can build on your computer, and it will create the resources for you, and you're not going to break anything on the production in case you have production application with Amplify. So you can play around with it on your sandbox while you don't have to care about breaking something.
Actually, it's really well done because, like, as you were talking, Salih, I was checking the landing page of the Amplify AI, and there is the hands-on tutorial button. Once you click on this, you are directly redirected to the GitHub repo where you have Amplify AI samples. So you install the dependency with npm, and then you run npm ampx sandbox, and then you can start playing with it. That's really cool. It's really simple. So, I kind of want to play with it once this podcast is done, because it looks very easy and simple to launch your first
Please
app
do.
with this. So, yeah. So,
and same for you at home. If you're listening this, wherever you're listening this, whenever you come back to your laptop, try it. Try it today. Send your feedback to the team. It's brand new. Discord is a nice place to get help from the team, from other users as well, and to send the feedback. So you already gave a glimpse of what's to expect talking about more platform, but there is probably more things to expect. So I know we don't share the roadmaps, but what are the developers that are listening to us can expect from the future of AWS Amplify AI Kit?
AI Kit's purpose is to be the full kit that everyone needs for building AI applications. Right now, we support the generation and conversation for the web frameworks and React Native. Of course, the first thing comes to my mind is working on other platforms as well, because we have a lot of customers on other platforms, and AI is a big topic right now for many indie developers, startups, and also enterprises. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind is actually having more capabilities besides the chat and the generation. The image generation and so on, it works. You can make that work through calling AppSync resolvers, for example, like I have mentioned earlier on, through calling tools. But what if you want to do it directly? I think that would be something really cool to have. There are more things to mention, because Amplify AI is one thing that really excites the customers right now, and it gets a lot of feedback, good feedback, through multiple channels that we have been talking to. So according to, of course, customer feedback, we will see what we will be bringing to. But in case you have an idea, wherever you are listening to, drop it to the GitHub issues, drop it to the Discord, and we will be listening as well and giving you answer. Maybe it's already on the roadmap. Maybe it is something that we didn't think of, or maybe it's the best idea ever.
You talked about the fact that you can use either chat or image generation. Does it still work also with multimodals models, where you have both images and text generation in the same time?
The answer is yes. Actually, one of our colleagues had built a demo application around that one, and I'm sure we will see it open source as well. He built an amazing story builder thing, like story generator with images, with the text and everything. So when you define something, it creates the image and the story, and it does also image recognition and everything. So it works all together. You can also bind things together as well through the handlers, through the tools. So the multimodal aspect of it, you can achieve it with Amplify AI.
That's right. AWS Amplify AI Kit. All the links about the blog post, the tutorial, the website, the doc that we talk about in this episode are in the notes of this podcast. So thank you for having listened to this episode until the end. See you next week, next Friday in your podcast application for next episode. Something tells me that we might talk about Amazon Q Developer, this coding assistant inside your IDE, and do something fun with Basic and Commodore 64 assembly language. But that's just an idea for next week or the week after. But now, go build.